Ed Crane with you back on thelibertyplaybook.com. It's kind of hard to do. Amending the Constitution, it's only been done 27 times in 220 some years. These two guys, they're fairly close to getting it done. This is Lou Uhler and his son Kirk Uhler, both California Republicans, anti-tax advocates. And very quietly, under the radar, they have been working for years now on a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, which would involve calling a convention of the states, something that is provided for in Article 5, but has never been done. How did you guys suddenly get to 28 states, 28 of the 50 on board, the legislatures? You need 34 to get your convention. You think it's going to happen soon?
Yes, it started a while back, and we've been through some ups and downs. But in the face of the huge debt and deficits of Obama, there was a resumption of this effort to protect our children and our grandchildren from this kind of debt. So we're now back to 28 of so just 6 away of the 34 necessary. We're working in 11 states. We have a real head of steam in many of those states right now, and we expect
several of them are actually already passed one of the two houses in several states. So
when you say you've got 28 states on board, that means you have both chambers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is something that does not require the governor to be a participant. It just requires the legislature, both houses, by resolution to trigger the Article 5 process.
Let's get into the weeds just a little bit on the Convention of the States. Again, Article 5 of the Constitution provides for the states to, in a sense, challenge Congress if they think something has to be added or amended to the Constitution. Now, we have right now in 2016 3 distinct efforts for this Convention of the States project. We have Lou Uhler's Balanced Budget Amendment Task Force, 28 states on board. Looks like they'll cross the goal line first. We have the Convention of States and Mark Meckler. They have kind of a big menu of potential amendments. They don't really put any limits on things, and that could be one of their problems because a lot of people fear that if you have a convention of the states, it could be what they call a runaway convention, where things that weren't even on the agenda suddenly pop up and the Constitution is amended for the worst. And then there's a third roadway, if you will. Governor Greg Abbott in Texas has put forth the Texas plan. He has 9 specific amendments. Now, the reason I think you guys are going to be successful is simple mathematics. You've got 28 states. Meckler has 8, and the governor doesn't have any. The governor, though, has the power of being a governor. He can call up the governors of other states and say, hey.
And fundraise.
Yes,
He can fundraise.
And he can fundraise. And he'll have a national agenda. So if you guys do cross first, what happens to the other 2 in your estimation?
It just facilitates
it's empowering
because,
for them.
Once we have a convention, once it has performed as the founders intended, it produces an amendment, sends it to the Congress, which distributes it to the states for ratification. Once that process is completed and we're successful, then we have confirmed what the founders intended. This is now available for whatever reforms anyone else would like at the federal level. They just have to convince enough people to do it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that a lot of liberals are opposed to amending the Constitution because they don't need to do it because they kind of amend it from the bench right now.
That's
right.
Exactly it. They right now it is the amending of the Constitution doesn't happen to the written word, but it happens to the implementation. And you're right. They already control those levers of power through the judiciary, and so why would they need this vehicle? But to Dad's point, every company that starts out with a product has a beta test, right? Mm-hmm. You gotta go and test this thing and see if it'll actually work.
You're not going to make it in 16 ounces if you can't sell 12.
Exactly, and so that's what is so important about where we are at 28 states, securing the additional 6, and getting this beta test underway and proving once and for all that the founders knew exactly what they were doing when they put this in the Constitution. They foresaw a day when Congress would find itself unwilling to regulate itself, and therefore the people needed to be in charge of regulating Congress when Congress doesn't discipline itself. And so we prove it with this one, and then we move on to other things, federal overreach onto state lands, all kinds of other things that we then start having really good, vigorous, healthy debates around the country around what does the 10th Amendment mean?
Well, you're probably sitting at home saying, what's the big deal? A balanced budget, we have to do it every month, or, we're going to go into debt, right? Well, believe it or not, there are arguments. Congress doesn't like being told what to do, is argument number one. Congress doesn't like anybody telling them they can't spend money, number two. And the state legislators, even we won't even name the state, but somebody said, well, if we force them to balance the budget, they're going to send the states less money.
Yeah, and to your comment about folks sitting at home needing to balance their budget, if they had a printing press in their basement, they wouldn't feel the same pressure now, would they?
No, they wouldn't. Or like President Obama, one of the gold cards with a $12 trillion limit.
And a pen and a phone.
It's important to remember that when he was president, Thomas Jefferson said, there's one failure that we had in our Constitution. We should have protected against the government's power to borrow. All right? So he was for a balanced budget amendment as he saw the operation of the government of the United States.
Ironic, because he died in a lot of debt.
Yeah.
And I almost had to lose Monticello, but story for another day. Lou and Kirk Uhler, they're fighting the good fight for a convention of the states for a balanced budget amendment. We will keep you up to date on their progress. Right now, 28 states, they need 34 to get the convention, and they need 38 to pass that resolution. I'm Ed Crane. Thanks for joining us on thelibertyplaybook.com.